Thanks, Avril, and thanks all for coming down and sharing a few moments to hear what I'm trying to do to make some progress on issues that I think all of us are concerned about. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. Obviously, you've seen all the television commercials. I'm the right-wing nut job extremist who doesn't like kids, who doesn't like college students, who doesn't like old people. I actually don't like puppies or cats either. But that's not who I am. I am a businessman, and I went into politics because I got fed up and frustrated with the mess at our own San Diego City Hall. I built 2 successful companies. They work with government and the nonprofit and private sectors on how to cut costs and improve performance. A lot of what you probably learned in some of the business classes, we tried learning about business practices and bringing those into government. Because I always believe that you can get better performance in any organization. I hear from a lot of people in government saying, oh, we're not private sector, so we really can't do that. We can't run like a business. Well, we can always look to improve processes. We always can look to and motivate the employees and prioritize. And so we had a great amount of success in federal, state, local government, school systems, law enforcement, environmental programs, foster care programs, in working with them to iron out performance problems. But along the way, San Diego City Hall caught my attention. Because these people down there were telling us in 2003 that, yeah, we have a budget deficit, but nothing that a little tax increase here or a fee increase there can't cure. And all is well. Well, they kept cutting our services. My opponent in this race was on the San Diego City Council. He was kind of like the ringleader on the council. And they eliminated daycare for needy families. You know, if you're a single mom, daycare is pretty darn important. He eliminated daycare. Cut library hours 42% citywide. Cut after-school programs. Cut park and rec programs. You want to keep kids out of trouble, having a library, having a park or rec center that's open, it's pretty important. They allowed our infrastructure to fall into disrepair. They slashed services or funding for our road maintenance, slurry seal, pothole repair. And of course, public safety also got hit pretty hard. At one point, the city browned out fire stations. Browning out fire stations. My opponent decided to eliminate the only fire rescue helicopter in the city. 3 months later, we were hit by massive firestorms. And so I looked at this and I said, wait a minute, with all these cuts in services, you're taking all this away from us? How in the world do you still profess to have a budget shortfall? You've just cut all the important things, and you've still raised our taxes and still raised our fees. Where are the dollars going? So I decided to underwrite something called the San Diego Citizens Budget. And we did a top-to-bottom review of the city, followed the money. Guess where we found the money went to? First, went to big bloated pensions for government employees. Standard retirement age is 55 in the city of San Diego. For police and fire, it's 50. How many of you think you're going to be able to retire at age 55? Wouldn't that be awesome? Well, in government, it's standard. Not just a low retirement age, but take a look at the payouts. City employees were retiring and getting in their first year of retirement more in pension payouts than their highest one-year salary working for taxpayers. You know it's a government idea when you're paid more not to work than you were paid to actually work. I said, you guys can't defend this. We found a librarian getting $234,000 a year in annual pension payouts. You guys in med school, you guys looking for, tech jobs? No, just learn the Dewey Decimal System and your life is gold. Yeah, come on. The fact that our money was going into these pensions was outrageous. Politicians, they reserved some nice little perks for themselves. While my opponent was running the city's finances into the ground, claiming we had a budget shortfall, cutting services like after-school programs, what did he do for himself? He raised politician pay by 42%. And this is a guy worth over $100 million, according to his own financial disclosures. 42% increase in politician pay that he supported. He spiked his own pension. Then, at the tender young age of 50, he took early retirement at taxpayers' expense. Again, he's worth $100 million. He's cashing pension checks. Worse than that, he voted himself an annual auto allowance and took $69,334. Now, look, I know there's some Democrat trackers in the room. Thank you for making it look like we have so much support here by showing up with your cameras. But come on, guys. $69,334. He's worth $100 million. In the middle of a budget crisis. So, look, this is why I got into politics. Scott Peters is one of the reasons why I got into politics, because I cannot fathom why someone so privileged would leave problems for the rest of us and have no care or worry about doing it. So when I came into City Hall, I got elected in 2008. I sold my companies. I said, I'm going to focus on doing the right thing at City Hall. Day one, what did I do? I gave up the politician pension. I said, I will not enroll in that pension system. I turned down $500,000 in lifelong payments. My partner, Jonathan, said, did you really have to do that? I mean, seriously. I cut my own compensation 22% on day one. Why? Because I said we're in a budget crisis. We need to lead by example. I'm going to be looking at government employee compensation like overtime and bonus pays, and I need to lead by example, 22% day one. I cut my own office council budget by 20%, and I had the smallest budget of any council member, and I still cut it by 20% and turned over $600,000 back to the city treasury to restore services. And I led the charge against perks. I said, no more auto allowance. It's not defensible. It's not right. Who out there in the real world gets paid $9,600 average per year to drive to and from work? It's indefensible. Again, I was a skunk at the garden party. My fellow politicians on the city council hated me. It's like, oh, there he comes. He's going to start talking about our goodies again. The thing that they hated the worst was the fact I took away their access to the luxury skybox at Qualcomm Stadium and Petco Park. The city gave itself a box in this deal in both Petco Park and Qualcomm, and the council members were taking the tickets. And I said, no more. First of all, I wish we could sell it, but more importantly, no tickets for you, no soup for you, no tickets for you. You are going to have to give those to community volunteers, because I think the volunteers in our city departments, in our neighborhoods, are some of the most important assets that we have. After we led by example on day one, we went on to find savings in the city's budget to balance the budget without tax increases and to restore services. I was so happy the day that we restored library hours in the city. Those are important programs. Or the days that we were able to see our park and rec programs restored. Or when we finally got our credit rating restored. Again, I'm a budget geek. Credit ratings are really sexy. I was really happy to see that. We got our credit rating restored. Or when we caught up on 5 years of financial statements or moved to a new financial system, SAP, so that our managers had better information about the money that they were spending, so they could make better decisions. When you boil it down, in 4 years' time, we cleaned up what he took 8 years to mess up. More importantly, we made government work, and isn't that what it's all about? Whether you're a Democrat or Republican, we want to make government work. We're not done. What we did in San Diego was the first start. Now, I know in Washington, instead of billions of dollars of liabilities, we're talking trillions of dollars of liabilities. Instead of hundreds of millions of dollars of deficit that Scott Peters left me to clean up, we're talking hundreds of billions of dollars in annual deficit that we face in Washington. But let me tell you, the playbook, the approach to reform is the same. Prioritize, improve our processes, hold people accountable. That's how we find ways to make government give more and cost less. And that's always going to be my focus, is how we can make government work. Stretch the dollar, try to get the biggest impact for you, taxpayer. More importantly than that, we got to get our economy moving. The American dream is out of reach for too many of us. And I tell the story about my own life, and here's my pitch. I have this crazy notion that the American dream should be getting easier for each generation. I mean, when you're involved in something, shouldn't each generation kind of learn a little bit better and then pass those ideas on to their kids and say, hey, you know, what we inherited from our parents and grandparents, we perfected it a bit more, and you're the beneficiary of all these lessons learned. So it should be easier for you than it was for me. And it should be easier for me than it was for my mom. What happened? 13, I lost my parents. Dad walked out on my mom 2 weeks before she died. The Jesuits took me in, gave me a great education. I was very lucky. My sister lived on the streets out of her car, first trimester pregnant, for many weeks. My brother got the worst end of the stick. He had to go to a place called Dubuque, Iowa, and live with my grandparents. Believe me, it's not a cool place. And so I made my way through high school. I earned a scholarship to Georgetown University. I had to take out student loans, maxed them out. When I got there on day one, I had $36 cash in my pocket. Saw my classmates being moved in by their parents in SUVs. They had stereos and flat screen TVs. I had 2 boxes and a bag. And I knew that my first appointment needed to be to go to the dean's office because I did not have enough money on scholarship or student aid and loans to make it for a 4-year degree. I had to do it in 3 years. So I had to take extra credits. I remember the dean said, no one has ever done the School of Foreign Service in 3 years. I'm like, well, dude, watch me. I got to do it. You know, financially, I can't do 4 years. I got to get this done. And then second of all, I had to get a full-time job while taking those extra classes because I didn't have any money for health insurance, room and board, food. By the way, I think all of you figured out, don't get the meal plan. You get nothing, all right? So I basically learned that the hard way after the first semester, and I skipped the meal plan. But I even had to script and save on books. I had to get my professors to put books on reserve in the library because I couldn't afford to buy the books. So I was able to make it through in 3 years, graduated. Instead of working for someone else, I decided I had this novel idea to build these companies that would study best practices in business and try to translate that into government to make government work better. So I went to a government agency, the Small Business Administration, because I saw an ad of guys saying, free money, and they were talking about SBA loans and grants. And I went in there with my idea, this government agency, I said, hey, I've got a business plan, I'm going to make government more efficient. Well, they were on the ground laughing in a second. They said, that's stupid, you're not going to be able to make it happen. Go out, get a job, get some experience, and then come back in a few years. Not to be deterred, I went to a big bank, Wachovia. I went into this lady and I said, I'd like to get a line of credit to start my seminars, to teach government how to be more efficient. And she said, well, do you have a house? I said, no. Do you have a stock portfolio or a savings account with money? I said, no, I'm a college kid just graduating. I don't have any money. She said, well, if you can't securitize your line of credit, we won't give you any loan. You have to have money to secure your line of credit or an asset. I remember blurting out to her, which I thought was kind of common sense, but she was offended by it. Well, if I had money, why would I be sitting here asking you for money? I just need a little bit of money to get this company started. She said no, so I did what any college kid would do in my shoes. Took out 2 applications for credit cards and I maxed them out. And I basically went into about $25,000 debt to market my first seminars. I remember being so nervous. I had to sell 50 tickets at $500. After 6 weeks, I sold 500 tickets. And I capitalized a company, and we immediately hired staff. And when I sold the company, we were in every single state in the union. We were in Canada and Latin America. And by age 28, I spun off a second company focusing on the private sector. The American dream was possible for me despite the fact that I had some pretty big obstacles with no parents. If I were to try to do the same today, and I walked into UCSD, cost of college higher, cost of living higher, cost of health insurance higher, the economy in the tank, I would not be able to get a full-time job in this economy. No way. I would be able to cram in 3 years and be able to afford that, even maxing out student loans. I would be able to start my own company from scratch. This is a really rough economy. No. If I were in your shoes and tried to do it over again, my American dream would be far out of my reach. And that's wrong. And I think we need to do something about it. Now, if we're going to fix these financial problems in Washington and get this American dream restored so that your opportunities are the same or better than mine, what is it going to take? Well, it's going to take people in both political parties willing to take on their party. Because I think both political parties are to blame for the dysfunction. I know you Democrats in the audience will say, no, we're all perfect. Please, As a Republican, I'm willing to criticize my party. I don't believe that my party has been inclusive enough. I don't believe my party has been positive enough in terms of offering solutions. They've too often been the party of no rather than the party of bold ideas. I don't think my party has expanded its vocabulary beyond a few set of issues. While I agree we need to secure the border, we need to balance the budget, we need a strong national defense, I really like the environment and I want to talk about that. And I want to talk about foster care. And I want to talk about K-12 education. Those mean a lot to me and many Americans, but where are the Republican agendas and ideas and solutions on those issues? You rarely hear. In San Diego, we have too many homeless, particularly veterans homeless. I'd like to hear Republicans talking about homeless issues. We see it in PB, we see it downtown, or throughout our city. These are real issues. I'm challenging my party to expand its vocabulary to all issues that people care about. And finally, as a gay guy, I don't agree with my party's position that we take politics and impose morality on you. I think you should be able to love who you want to love. I think that you should be able to make decisions on your health care. I think that as a woman, you should have the rights to decide your reproductive choices. I think that you shouldn't have government spying on your cell phone or your email, that there's something called due process in our Constitution, and if they want to get your information, they need to go get at least a search warrant. I don't think that we should have federal government intervening on states when they decide to have medical marijuana. That's a states' rights issue. And so there are personal freedom issues that I hope that at least in my role as a new generation Republican, that I can challenge my own party to say, guys, enough. Step aside from those social issues. Let people decide in the context of their faith, their family beliefs, their personal priorities. You guys can't even balance your damn checkbook. How are you telling people how to live their lives? Now, for the Democrats out there, I can't change your party, but I think your party needs to change as well. My hope is that I will inspire some Democrats in their party to do what I'm trying to do in mine. This isn't working on either side. If you're intellectually honest, looking at the results, none of us, Democrats or Republicans, none of us can be happy with what both parties have failed to do in Washington. So it's up to us. It's up to us each individually, Democrats and Republicans, and everyone in between, to challenge them. Say we deserve better. And so I'm going to open it up to questions. I'm happy to take questions from Democrats as well. I'm okay. I've survived 11 days of a complete smear. I'm tough. Yes, sir.
First up, you have my vote.
Thank you.
Oh.
Say that vote thing again, please.
Yeah, you have my vote on election day.
Awesome.
But my question, Obamacare has been an abysmal failure. I think that's quite apparent. But we hear Republicans talk about repeal, but they offer no solutions. So what is the solution? What is the alternative to Obamacare?
I think you're absolutely right in the basis of your question. And my view is you can't beat something with nothing. And so what we need to do is come up with solutions on how we make healthcare more affordable, more accessible, and more focused on the quality of care, not the process, not the mandate. I'm going to say something that some Republicans aren't going to like. I think there are some good things about Obamacare that we should keep. Number one, I don't think that health insurance companies should be able to penalize you for pre-existing condition. If we really are expanding accessibility in healthcare and more people are actually covered under insurance, then you have a more diverse risk pool. Pre-existing condition penalties no longer make sense from a market standpoint. Number two, if you want to stay on your parents' health insurance policy as a kid, if they want to have you on there, so be it. I mean, there are rates that can be established. Never made sense to me why we didn't have that flexibility. Number three, I would keep the healthcare exchanges, but I would not have them managed and run by government. I think the healthcare exchanges actually solve for a market flaw, and markets can be flawed. Markets can be amazingly powerful in providing better options, in solving problems faster and cheaper, but markets also can be flawed. And the flaw in the market is that health insurance companies are not interested in your purchase. They're interested in your employer's purchase. They're not seeking your business. They're seeking your employer. They negotiate with your employer, and then your employer will then turn around and say, here are the plans that we offer. Another flaw there is not only they're not seeking you, but if you are self-employed, which is the fastest growing part of our economy, more and more Americans are 1099, they're self-employed, they're starting a small business. When I started my small business, my health insurance for the 10 employees I started out with was higher in year 1 than it was per employee in year 3 when we had 180. Why? Because of economies of scale. Health insurance rates for large corporations with 10,000 employees are lower than corporations with 100 employees or, yes, the individual trying to buy. So what does the exchange do to solve that problem? It allows you to get Costco-like purchasing, bulk purchasing power. And last time I checked, making markets work better is a Republican idea, so I don't understand why we don't embrace the concept, the vehicle of exchanges, and say, yeah, you know what, there are some good ideas. There are good ideas that Democrats have. We're going to keep those good ideas. We want to thank you for getting that stuff rolling. But we don't agree with all these other ideas, and so we want to come up with something better. What would those something betters be? Number 1, using the exchanges, allow people to buy health insurance across state lines. Break up the monopolies the health insurance companies have state by state. Their lobbyists paid off Congress so that they could keep those monopolies in place. Number 2, get rid of the tort lawyers. Get rid of the lawyers in healthcare by reforming frivolous lawsuits. Get doctors to where they're not worried about defensive medicine, but they're instead thinking about preventative medicine. I went into a doctor right after the mayor's race in 2012. Yeah, it was not a shrink because it was Bob Filner that beat me. Oh my God! Tell me about major psychoanalytical sessions there. No, I went into a doctor because my arm was hurting me. A couple months after the election, I cut back my schedule and arm started hurting me. Right hand, elbow. So I stopped working out my biceps and got a lot worse. So much so that in the morning when I woke up, my elbow was atrophied so that I couldn't even lift up the cell phone off my nightstand. Went into the doctor looked at me in February and he said, oh, I know what you have. You got politician's arm. I was like, what is that? He said, well, you probably were running around, shaking hands, and going to event after event after event, and then you stopped, right? I said, yeah. And then when it stopped hurting, you stopped working out. I said, yeah. He said, that's the exact wrong thing to do. You need to do exercises. I'm going to give you a $5 brace, and your muscle will then be developed again, and it's going to be fine. Because it contracted when you stopped, and now you just need to work it out. He took out his pad, and he said, but I'm going to order up an x-ray on the off chance that you have a tumor in your elbow. I said, well, why? I thought you said I had politician arm. He's like, oh, no, it's politician arm, I know it. But if you do have a tumor and I don't order the x-ray today, then I'll get sued. And I also have a review of my cases by my insurance carrier to make sure that my liability coverage can be renewed. I said, well, I'm under a health savings account and that's going to cost me money. Can I sign a waiver somewhere? He said, absolutely, you can do that. So I signed a waiver, and guess what? I did have politician arm, not the tumor. I made a good decision with my doctor, and we were able to look at the dollars that I wanted to spend and the healthcare I wanted to purchase. If I were under a preferred provider organization, if I was under Medicare example, I wouldn't worry about the cost because I never really see the bill. We need to get the tort attorneys out of that exam room. We need to be the doctor and the patient making the decision. We need the healthcare insurance bureaucrats out of that exam room, including government bureaucrats, and we need the decisions made by doctors and patients. We also need to make sure that you have more options and portability of health insurance. In the new economy, they say that on average you're going to have three careers in your lifetime. I know that you're studying a specific degree, but the predictions are that our generation will have 3 careers in our lifetime. And within each of those careers, you'll have maybe 5 to 7 jobs where you turn over your job every 3 years. Now, think about it from the standpoint of mom. She's got a great doctor who got a great bedside manner with the kids. Like this doctor, the needles never hurt. She changes jobs. That doctor's no longer in her provider network. Kids are going to be real upset. But her employer has decided she's with Aetna, not with Cigna, or vice versa. I'm going to take those healthcare exchanges. I'm going to propose that we pass a law that allows you to take any healthcare policy given to you by an employer and exchange that on the exchange for cash value for a policy that you feel meets your needs, your lifestyle better. That could be a health savings account for those of us that are younger. Could be a better policy with a better set of doctor choices for people who have the desire to put a little bit more money in. At that point, what happens, the health insurance agencies are not looking at you, your employer, they're looking at you as an individual. And that's what we want to do in terms of more competition, more transparency, more options, more flexibility in healthcare. Now, I don't want to go on too long on Obamacare, but I recognize that this healthcare crisis is like pension reform. When I took office on city council, I did not know everything about pension reform in the city, but I knew I had to real quick learn about it. So I surrounded myself with a bunch of smart people and just kept asking questions. And on that basis, I traveled a learning curve, and we were able to author the 2012 Pension Reform Initiative that now is the model for the country on how to deal with out-of-control government pension programs. We figured it out. We made it work. I'm not there yet on health care. I'm continuing to listen to people and get great ideas. And if we approach it from that standpoint, I absolutely know, we can pass meaningful healthcare reform in this country that doesn't have a Democrat or Republican label next to it, that just has a common sense label next to it. And I'm committed to try to do that. I'm going to take on my own party and say, look, enough of the blame game, fix it. Let's figure out how to make things work. I hope you are in that same boat as well. Long answer to a real important question that I know that we've got to deal with. Yes, sir, right there in the green shirt.
Hey. Thanks. Okay. Thanks for being here tonight. I think it sounds, great to say you're going to take on your own party, but I think we already have a lot of Republicans in Congress taking on their own party. Just ask John Boehner, and that doesn't seem to be helping things run more smoothly. So that's what kind of makes me nervous.
Depends on, I guess, how you would define taking on your own party. There are people in Washington who stretch to the extremes, and they think that their party isn't extreme enough. And they light their hair on fire in the town square, and they demand, if you don't 100% agree with everything that they have to offer, that somehow you're suspect, you're a rhino, you're a dino, or whatever the heck they want to call you that day. That's not what we need. We need people who are willing to take on their party and say, stop the politics. If you can get something done, get it done. And stop trying to put poison pills into bills. I criticize both Harry Reid and Republican leadership in the House for what they're doing right now to hold good ideas hostage. What happens is the House passes a bill, goes to the Senate, and goes into the drawer by Harry Reid. They say Harry Reid is Obama's veto. Then, when the Democrats in the Senate pass a bill, they send it to the House, it goes into a drawer in the Speaker's office. Boehner's known as the roadblock, close down the road. I think that we need to change the rules of the House and the Senate so that we aren't afraid to vote on legislation. I'm not afraid to debate and vote on a piece of legislation I may not agree with. The main reason why we're not seeing common sense legislation passed is that there are centrists who will cross over and get a majority vote on a piece of legislation that's commonsensical, but it's never been able to be done because it's never brought up for a vote. In fact, a lot of these members say, yeah, don't bring it up to a vote because I really don't want to vote for that thing, but I know I can't avoid voting for it. That is the wrong way to run a legislature. So much so that I partnered with Donna Fry, a Democrat, first months in office. And we got a reform put forward because at the time, the council president, Ben Waso, said to me, and to Donna, by the way, I will never let you put legislation before the city council. You're not even needed for quorum, he told me. And I said, that's wrong. We ought to be able to offer ideas. If you don't like the idea, vote against it, but at least give me 10 minutes just to present an idea and call the question. Donna agreed, and we got through a reform that said 4 council members could sign a memo, and it has to be docketed and voted on. 2 years later, Tony Young came in, a Democrat. Tony Young was a gentleman. He said, Carl, I may not agree with all your ideas, but I'm going to always give you an opportunity to offer it. You don't even need to get the memo with 4 signatures. We'll give you an opportunity. That's how most of my agenda got through, is that we actually finally got to a vote of the council on my reforms, and they kept adopting them. It also meant that I couldn't demand 100%. I was a negotiator. I started out with a grand offer. I'm going to take $100,000 for this product. And you're like, no, I'm not going to buy that. All right, let's negotiate. So you start out with a bold plan. You say, we're going to get this thing solved in one fell swoop. Well, at some point, you got to be able to compromise. You have to be able to bring people together. Take some ideas from them, take some ideas from you. And I always felt that if I could get 3 out of 10 ideas done, that's a great deal. I'd always drive my colleagues batty sometimes when I would say, this is a good piece of legislation. I want to commend the council, the labor unions for coming together, and we got this done. Pause, pause, pause. But we're not done with this issue yet. And so while I want to recognize we're making progress, I look forward to next year's round of negotiations for additional reforms to solve the problem. You know, that's a reasonable thing to do. Is to say, we're going to do this, we're going to make progress, we agree on these 3 out of 10, but I don't think we've gone far enough, so next year I'm looking forward to our next round of debate and our next round of deliberations. You know, big government wasn't built overnight. Big mandates weren't imposed on business overnight. It's not going to happen overnight to fix it. And so we need to be looking for a long-term vision to make this a more prosperous, more free, a more accountable government. I think we can do that. Yeah. Right here in the front row.
I wanted to ask a question that was, I think, pretty close to dear to a lot of our hearts here at UCSD. Sometimes when you talk about accountability, people have been using accountability and talking about the NIH budget. And they're saying that accountability is Congress making the decisions about where grants go on the NIH, things like that. I just was curious about it.
Totally agree with you. I think we need to have the peer review system. I'd like to make sure that we are diversifying the institutions that are getting grants. There's a little bit of a good old boys, good old girls network that we know in academia and research is happening. But I really believe, and I've put on record my views on this, that it ought to be merit-based. It ought to be free of political manipulation and pressure. And I will fight hard to defend that. And I will also make sure that we make a good case for San Diego. Some of the best research around the world is done right here in San Diego. Let me also make sure I touch the box, check the boxes. We got Mr. Peters out there saying that I want to cut student loans. No better way to sugarcoat it. It's a bald-faced lie. And he knows it. He knows it. If you want to criticize me for my positions, at least get them right. I believe that we need to make student loans more flexible, more accessible. I will never support a reduction in our ability to give you an affordable college education. I've actually proposed, as part of my Free to Be plan a year ago, we came here to UCSD to lay out this plan that would allow us to expand the student loan management to community banks and credit unions, which right now are prohibited from providing student loans. Number 2, that we should have student loan interest rates that are market-based, tied to the Treasury note, 2%, not this 9% business. Number 3, banks know that if they put you in default, the federal government will pick up the tab. So why in the world would they give you any flexibility on repayment if you lose your job, have a challenge? They're not giving many people that opportunity because they say the law doesn't allow us to do it. Baloney. And just to make sure they're clear on it, we can change any law that they want to make sure that if you do have a problem, that we work with you on repayment. Give you maybe 6 months to work things out, maybe interest only for a bit. Because the worst thing you want to have happen is go into default. If you can get a borrower to get back on their feet, that's a good thing. And we do that in a lot of different borrowing scenarios. And so I really believe that we need to have those changes in the student loan program. And I've actually adopted some of President Obama's ideas on student loans about indexing to a percentage of your income for certain jobs, your student loan repayment rates. We even talked about if you start a small business that you get a year of reduced payments, because I want people to start their own business. I want them to become entrepreneurs. I want to have an environment where you're not an employee, you're the owner. That's a good thing. And so student loans right now, I think, are people are walking out of these institutions heavy in debt. with very little flexibility. We need to figure out how to make that a more market-based, more flexible program. Finally, I think we need to deal with the expensive cost of colleges. That's why I'm going to be pushing a pension reform initiative in the state of California that will make UC system and CSU systems more affordable, just like we made San Diego more affordable. Yes, right back there in the jacket. Well-dressed people get priorities on questions.
The mic's not working, so I hope you can hear me. First
I can.
of all, you mentioned earlier that you want to work with both parties in office if you should be elected. Might be a good start if you actually refer to members that are in office by their titles that they deserve, like Congressman Peters, Leader Reid, and President Obama. Now, I'm supposed to be using this time for a question, so here it is. You mentioned earlier that you want to expand your party's vocabulary past issues like national defense and the economy. Then why have you recently come out and said that you want to focus your campaign on relevant issues like national defense and the economy?
Excuse me? I'm trying to figure out that. You think it's wrong that I talk about
No.
national defense and the economy? I'm trying to figure this out.
My question is this. You said that you want to expand your party's vocabulary past just those two issues.
Yeah.
Why have you recently come out and said that that's what you want the focus of your campaign to be?
I think my focus on the campaign is a variety of issues that people care about. Whether it's securing the border or talking about my free to be plan here at UCSD to make college more affordable, or talking about getting my party off of these divisive social issues in favor of personal freedoms. Or maybe it was the time when I talked about that we've got to accept that the climate is changing, we need more research and development, and we need to have a more sustainable way of living and operating businesses. Or maybe it was the time I talked about making sure that we could get money back into the Highway Trust Fund to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure. Or maybe it was the time I talked about making sure that corporations pay a fair share of taxes by closing loopholes. Or maybe it might have been that time that I talked about healthcare reform and in terms of making a more competitive system. Or maybe you missed that time. I think you missed that time a lot. Last question right back here. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so I have a quick question related to college affordability. So I currently sit as the University Affairs Director with the UC, and the regions are looking to increase tuition, and they're looking at a 4 to 5% increase per year.
I thought they promised if we raised taxes they wouldn't do that. Wasn't that what they said 2 years ago? I'm sorry, I missed the memo there.
Yeah, so I know there's only so much that you would be able to do, but what do you think as students we should do? What should be our next step when it comes to communicating with the regions or with the university in itself for accessibility and affordability?
I think we ought to do this. Do what we did in San Diego when I did my citizens budget. I think we need a student budget for the UC system. Don't accept it. Don't accept what you're being told. You guys probably have a lot better ideas and a lot better brain power than the folks that are putting together the UC budget today. So what I'm going to do is challenge you to go out there and come up with ideas, bold ideas, fresh ideas. You don't have the blinders on that the UC bureaucrats have on about the budget. You come in with fresh perspectives. That is a very enviable position. And I think that will only create a debate, a dialogue, that could actually surface some great ideas for saving money. When I was taking on the issue of student books, so I had my own problem with student books because I was like, oh my God, I never expected this cost. I didn't think about the cost of books. I can't afford this. This is an entire month's worth of living expenses. I can't afford this. And so what I did is I went to my first to the bookstore and I said, are you guys marking up the books? Oh no, we don't get markups on books. So I got a friend to get a work-study job at the bookstore and get the actual book list. And we did a big expose in the student paper about how they're marking up books. I used that to challenge the student government to get more involved with organizing a book exchange so that at least we could buy books that are used. Of course, the bookstore did not like that. The bookstore also said that they own the list. And that's why local bookstores weren't buying books and stocking them, because the only outfit in town that had the book list from the professors was the university bookstore. It was a monopoly. So what I was able to do there is I got professors to agree to put books on reserve in the library. So you didn't have to buy the book. You could actually go in, take it off reserve, sit in the library, read it, and then turn it back in before you left. That's how I got through college. That's how I got through college. Tried making some changes in the system, but ultimately came up with this workaround of getting my college professors just to sign a letter, putting the books on reserve. It's just one example. I know it's not going to solve the UC system overnight. Okay, I totally get it. But don't just accept what they're serving you in terms of the cost structure of your education. Get engaged. They'll say, well, you're just a college student. So, look at the system you've run. It doesn't seem to be working real well for all of us. Why don't you open up the shades and let us take a peek? That's important, that you take that sort of style and approach. You have just as much smarts as they do when it comes to solving these problems. Let me end on this. You're not going to agree with everything I have to say. One of the things that I detest most about politics is that politicians have perfected the art of what I call the misunderstood agreement. That's where when you talk in cotton candy sentences, so broad, so fluffy, that politicians want you to think that we actually agree on stuff, 100%. They don't really take a position. Think Nathan Fletcher. And so I don't want to leave you with misunderstood agreement. I would rather have understood disagreement. Because then you'll know that, okay, Carl is blunt, he's direct on issues. I know that I can count on him to do this. But I also know that we disagree on these issues here. And I won't be surprised when he goes back to Washington and votes a certain way. You know, there may be people here that don't agree with the fact that we need to change Obamacare. All right? I'm on record. We need to fix our healthcare system, and I don't think that the current law works. But at least you'll know where I'm coming from. At least I'm being honest and direct and blunt. And I think we need more of that in politics. We may disagree on 20%, we may disagree on 80%. It doesn't make you, when we disagree on 20%, a 20% enemy. It makes you my 80% ally and friend. And even if we disagree on 80%, we still have common ground on 20%. So let's focus on that 20% and get it done. I hope that you heard something tonight that would be at least inspiring you to give me a vote. I'm interested in that. But more importantly, if you're interested in a campaign position, if you're interested in a paid position or a volunteer position, we could use your help. And so we do have campaign staff here. Alex is my coordinator on the college campuses. Grant, where are you? In the back. He's got a jacket on back there. We got a table in the back. Please sign up either to be a volunteer or a paid position. The next 14 days are critical. We need to get out the vote. I appreciate you coming tonight and being so, with rare exception, so respectful and listening. I appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you so much. We're going to be transitioning into a wonderful evening. And again, everybody make sure to vote on November 4th. Eyes on you.
I appreciate the question. Aw, Carl. Carl, thanks.
Hey everybody, could you hear it one more time for our special guest, Carl DeMaio? And a big thank you to all the students who put this together and students who attended. And everyone
Sorry, I just wanted to introduce you very simply to
Timia, nice to meet you.
Vice President of External Affairs for the Graduate Students.
Oh, excellent.
And we just wanted to thank you so much for having us.
Hey, thanks for having me. It was a